What is the best piece of playground equipment? Now, when I ask people this question in person, I tend to get a lot of different answers. I get the slides, I get the swings, I get the merry-go-round. I even get a couple of sarcastic folks yelling out the park bench. And what this says to me is that there is not a consensus on the best piece of playground equipment. Now, you may be wondering, why am I starting off this presentation by asking you about your favorite piece of playground equipment? We're going to get to that. I promise I'll bring it back around. But for now, let's pretend that I put you on that merry-go-round, spun you around, you fell off, hit your head, and we're now in a place where we're talking about the linear funnel. Rough ride, I know, but I promise I'm going to bring it back around. Now, at its core, the linear funnel is 3 phases: awareness, consideration, and decision. And what a lot of marketers do is they whip out their editorial calendar and they say, I'm going to do 2 pieces of content in awareness, 2 pieces of content in consideration, 2 pieces of content in decision. That's 6 pieces of content I'm going to publish once per month. I now have 6 months of content strategy, right? Good job, marketer. Now, I'm hoping that most of you in the audience are shaking your head and saying, that's not how it works. It's way more complicated than that. And in fact, you are correct. So these are the Google results for the linear funnel. And there's some complicated stuff going on here. We've got like 6 phases. We've got things bowing in and out, right? So what this tells me is we need a more sophisticated model. And so the latest model is kind of this looping decision journey. And at its core, it's 4 phases: awareness, consideration, purchase, and some sort of upsell, cross-sell, or retention phase that somehow just like drops you back in the same loop, like you just go back to awareness for some reason. But all right, cool. This is what we're working with. So I'm going to add 2 additional pieces of content. That's 8 pieces of content, still published once per month. I now have 8 months of content strategy, right? Like I am a smart marketer. Now, of course, you're all shaking your heads and saying, that's still not right. It's way more complicated than that. And in fact, you are correct again. This is the Google results for the looping decision journey. Now, again, with the complicated stuff here, I have to say that actually the most terrifying image on this screen for me is down in the bottom right. And that's the Mobius. How many of you have ever been stuck in the infinite loop of sales and marketing content? Right? It's terrifying. So I got to thinking, we need a new model. And I got very excited because I thought I had solved it. And it's this piece of equipment. And in the US, we call this the jungle gym. And it's kind of handy because it allows you to kind of go up and down, and it's got different ways for you to go. But there's still one big problem with the jungle gym as the model, and that there's really only one objective to get to the top, right? Like you really only want to get to the top of the jungle gym. And so it's still me as a marketer forcing you as an audience member to go on the journey that I want you to go on. Which brings me back to the playground. What's the right way to play on the playground? Is it to go slides and then swing and then merry-go-round? Is it to skip the merry-go-round altogether? And what about those people sitting on the park bench? Are they using the park and the playground the wrong way? Of course not. And so as we think about the buyer's journey, we need to treat this as a playground. People can enter and exit as they desire. They can go in any order, and they can engage with content the wrong way. Now, what does it mean to engage with content the wrong way? Let's take pricing as an example. So pricing is traditionally considered a bottom of funnel discussion. It's a purchase level decision in the buyer's journey for the linear funnel. But a couple years ago, my boss came to me and he said, Ashley, we need to buy this tool. And so I'm thinking, what kind of budget should we ask for? I have no idea. So I start Googling around, I find the big players in the space, and I start reaching out and I say, hey, I'm just looking to get a ballpark for a budget ask for this many licenses at this service level. Can you just give me a ballpark? And a lot of people responded, oh, I'm very sorry. You need to download this white paper first. Oh, you need to book a demo. Oh, you need to do this other thing. You need to fill out this form. I wasn't even in the funnel or the awareness phase yet because I didn't even have budget. And so then when I got on the call, I finally get the budget and they want to start all the way back at the top. Let me explain to you why this problem exists. And I was like, no. I bought in on the problem. I bought in that a tool exactly like yours can solve it. I need you to sell me your tool versus a competitor. And the number of salespeople that just couldn't get that through, they just had to walk me all the way through the process before we got to the bottom. And it made me feel kind of frustrated because I'm like, no, I bought in, just sell me. right? So as we think about this buyer's journey and we think about the mindset that our audience is in, we need to build a journey that's so smart with so many different entry and exit points that we can meet people no matter where they are. So how do we do that? If we're not going to base our content on the linear funnel, what are we going to use? And so I'd like to introduce a new narrative framework. And this framework is based on content depths. So we have first the conceptual depth. This is theoretical and philosophical in nature, and it focuses on the what and the why of the idea. This helps our audience think about and understand the problem space. Next is the strategic level, and this focuses on the process, tools, and key knowledge components that must be included to make conceptual ideas reality. This helps our audience think about the solution space and evaluate solutions. It helps them come up with criteria to determine whether a solution will work for them, and it equips them to do their own research. Now, I want to be clear, this is not just helping them think about the solution that you provide or that you sell. You're going to lose a lot of credibility if you say that the only way to solve someone's problem is for them to buy your product or service. And finally, the tactical level. So this is the super nitty-gritty where the rubber meets the road, prescriptive step-by-step instructions. These are the daily habits, specific exercises, and individual things that need to be happening daily to make the strategic and conceptual ideas reality. Now, a lot of marketers like to spend time at this level because it's very straightforward, and it also can translate into your sales enablement or feature type of content. But it's not only your sales enablement or feature, subscription, and benefit content. This is also thinking about the practices side and the exercises and the actions that people need to take, whether they buy from you or not. Next, we need to think about distribution. And again, I want to take a holistic approach to this. So first, we'll start with our asset type. This could be written, visual, audio, interactive, long form, short form, live, recorded. And what I see happen in a lot of companies, especially larger companies that have individual teams, is that each team thinks that the asset they create is the only asset that we need. I'm the blog team, therefore every asset is a blog. I'm the video team, therefore every asset is a video. But as marketers, we need to step back and think about who is the audience, what is the channel, and what is the best asset type for the audience and for the channel. Next, we need to think about the channel and the platform. So this is your mix of paid, owned, and earned channels, and it can be a place to host content and a place to share content. And finally, metrics. So I want to be clear here. All assets and all channels do not need to accomplish all things at all times. In a lot of cases, it's really hard to improve both reach and engagement. And particularly on organic social channels, CTR or click-through rate is a really difficult thing to achieve, no matter what your reach or engagement are. And so as you think about each asset and each channel, think about the specific metric that you want to optimize for in that channel, that moment, and for that audience. So once you've gone through the narrative framework and you've mapped out your content from a conceptual, strategic, and tactical depth, you've thought about the asset type and you're looking at the potential asset, you should be able to fill out a table that looks something like this. So let's walk through a real world example. So I say that I am a fitness fiend in my profile. And so I love to use this example because I think it resonates with a lot of different people. And that is, what does it mean to be healthy and fit? Now, most people agree it's some combination of diet and exercise. But you're going to answer that question very differently if you're runner's world versus muscle and fitness versus yoga journal. So I personally prefer bodybuilder style workouts. So let's double tap in and answer this question as if we're muscle and fitness. So at a conceptual level, you would say you're healthy and fit if you have big, strong muscles and a high protein diet. At the strategic level, you might talk about things like having good form when you lift or the value of compound lifts. And then also talking about the differences between fast digesting and slow digesting protein. And at a tactical level, this is your 10 tips to build bigger biceps or 5 recipes to make for chicken dinner this week. So I want to talk about a couple of ways to do this as a B2B company. So obviously I come from B2B SaaS, so I've got a little bit of a bias toward those types of examples, but I tried to pull a couple of different examples from other industries as well. So the first tactic to build this playground is to use content pairing. So I love this example from Canva. If you look in their search results, they actually have the top ad for create a brochure or brochure design, and then they also have the top search result after that. And so if you click into this, you land on a page that gives you a bunch of strategic and tactical level tips for designing and using brochures effectively. But when you click that purple button, it drops you directly into the product. And so you can immediately start designing. So it drops you right in from a tactical perspective, but it also guides you with templates and design best practices. So it's teaching you how to design something effective while also allowing you to put that into practice. The other thing that I love about this is that you can start designing without having to give up any information or sign up for an account. So you don't have to do that, either sign in or sign up for a free account until you've created something and you're ready to save that, which you can see in the upper right corner. We've also used this tactic at Atlassian to pair some product demos and Ask Me Anything content. And so in this case, we're pairing different asset types, and we're mostly playing at the tactical level across different platforms. Now, the big differentiator here is that instead of having a very polished, fancy animated demo video with a bunch of fancy actor voiceovers, we work directly with our product managers, engineering managers, and designers to record short videos for each new feature. We then pair that with an Ask Me Anything in our community so that people can ask questions directly of the product managers, engineers, and designers who are actively building and working on these products. Next, we pair conceptual, strategic, and some tactical level content on our Agile Coach microsite. And again, we've done this with a series of short YouTube videos and long-form SEO optimized content. We then embed those YouTube videos back into the long-form articles so that our audience has the opportunity to read or watch the content. And in this case, this is evergreen content at a high level. So it's product agnostic. You could do this with sticky notes. You could do this on a whiteboard. And sure, if you want to do it with products, we do have tutorials that you can see. But for the most part, this is product agnostic so that you can learn and improve your practices no matter which tools you're using. We also used this approach at Duarte whenever we were talking about the new book Illuminate from Nancy Duarte and Patty Sanchez. So in the book, they lay out 10 stories that leaders need to tell on a transformational journey. And so we broke that into 2 separate ebooks, one for warning stories and one for motivating stories. And we published one of the ebooks for free, ungated on SlideShare. And then at the end, we had the ability to go and download the rest of the stories. And in that case, it went over to a gated form. And so you could fill it out and get the rest of the stories. Now, if you happen to land on the gated form first, you could still fill it out, download those stories, and then it would link over to the free version on SlideShare for you to read about and get the entire 10 stories. We also use this tactic by pairing LinkedIn articles with SlideShare case studies. So in this case, we talked about the strategic value of adding humor to a presentation. And then we pair that with tactical content of case studies of real world people who use different types of humor. Same thing here, we cross-linked those two. So no matter whether you found us on LinkedIn first or you found us on SlideShare first, you were able to pop up and see, oh, what is the strategic value of adding humor? Or pop down and say, man, how does this look in practice? How are real world people doing this? Finally, you can also use republishing content. So in the cases I just showed, we were doing a mix of using assets in multiple places. Here, you can republish the content in a couple of different ways. So first, you can pair problems and solutions. You frame up the problem on one site, and then you link to a piece that details the solution on another site. So this would be a way to do this with an owned property and a third-party property. For example, the Muse did this. They wrote up a post on LinkedIn talking about the fact that they had thrown away a resume of the perfect candidate. And so what happened is, as the hiring manager was going through, they tossed this resume out. But it turns out that that person was an employee referral. And so the employee came and said, hey, why didn't you interview this person that I referred? So they dug the resume out of the trash, gave the person an interview, and ended up hiring them. And so they set up this problem that how do you make sure that when you're the perfect candidate, your resume doesn't get tossed in the trash? And then they linked over to say, read our tips on the Muse. Next, you can do case studies or research. So in this case, there's a couple of different ways you could set this up. You could do the problem, what it is and why it matters, and pair that with the solution to say, here's how we solve that problem, and then cross-link to the content with proof points. So we used this tactic at Atlassian with our State of Diversity and Tech report. So on LinkedIn, our head of balance and belonging at the time, Aubrey Blanche, wrote a longer post talking about why we ran this survey and a short summary of the findings. And then she linked over to how we're solving this problem at Atlassian and a place where you could download the specific report for all of this information. And finally, you can just straight up republish existing content. So take your long form content, publish it on the existing site or another site, and then include a comment at the bottom to say, see the original, and make sure you mark the link as canonical so that you don't confuse the SEO results. So we've done this a number of times. We're marketing to a technical audience for Agile and DevOps related topics. And so D-Zone actually hosts a lot of our audience. And this is a great way for us to expand the views and expand our audience reach without having to create a whole net new piece of content. And as you can see in the yellow box, it says published at D-Zone with permission by this author. You can see the original article here. And handily, D-Zone actually has an option where you can just mark the original reference link. And that way it ensures that the canonical goes to your owned property while still allowing you to reach new audiences and increase the reach of the piece of content. And then the Muse has actually done this a ton. So I've written a number of articles with them about career advancement and team management. And so they publish all of these articles on the Muse, and then they have syndication partnerships with folks like Forbes, Time, and Mashable, where those are repurposed. In this case, the Muse is noted as the kind of top line author, as you can see in the Forbes screenshot. But then at the bottom, they include the original author in the bio, and then they include the link. Now, the nice thing here is that everybody wins. I, as an author, win because my content has been shared to multiple different audiences and high domain authority. Forbes wins because they're paired with an additional high domain authority with their own following. They also win because the author has an additional link to share and promote. And then obviously the Muse wins again because they've got that high domain authority and they're able to promote content that the authors have written to a new audience. So everybody can share, everybody gets high domain authority backlinks, and it's off of just a single piece of content. Now, it's not just long form content that has changed. I want to talk a little bit about social media. So this is an example from a cloud access security broker that I worked at prior to it getting acquired by Oracle. So we went to AWS reInvent and we created booth graphics, both online and offline, to talk about this story. And so what we did is we placed an Amazon tap in a locked case and then a bowl of what looked like identical keys next to it. And if you drew a key and it unlocked the box, you won the tap. Now, being that there were a lot of security professionals at this conference, most people were skeptical that there were any working keys in the bowl. So what we did is every time somebody won, we snapped a picture of the unlocked lock and the tap, and then we posted that to the company Twitter account. And then we asked the people to please follow us, retweet, and let us tag them to show it. And so when people would come up and say, there's not any working keys, you guys are just like, you only have one tap, right? I could turn my phone around and say, no, look, follow us on Twitter. You can see how many real people have won. And some people got really into it. They wanted to watch the Twitter feed and like try to calculate how many people could win and what was the rate every hour. And so it really engaged people at the booth in kind of this digital way. Now, the other thing is that we wanted to engage people on our Twitter feed. My latest rant is I hate it, especially as we're going back to in-person conferences where people are saying, visit us at booth 123, visit us at booth 123, all over their social media accounts. But if people aren't at the conference, you're just spamming them for 3 days. So how do you unite that online and offline experience? In our case, we created an ebook, which we published for free on SlideShare, talking about cautionary tales that our product had helped solve. And then we tied that in at the booth with a printout and into our graphics. And so whether you saw us at the booth or you saw us on social media, we were telling a united story that you could participate in. The other thing we did is we used this as our follow-up for people we had scanned at the booth in our emails. And so because it all tied in with the swag, with social media, and with our graphics, and it was memorable, we had substantially higher open rates and click-through rates in the email. We also used a pairing strategy to pair live stream from an event with live streams on Facebook at our most recent summit. So this was actually back in 2019 before everything had to go virtual. But here what we did is we had certain on-demand sessions available from certain speakers, and we invited them to do a short live interview directly on site. And then we streamed that to Facebook so that people could get a taste of the conference, even if they weren't attending. And then we included links to blog posts, on-demand sessions where available, and downloadable playbooks for people that paired well with the content. And finally, we have gone one-to-one directly on Twitter with our customers. So when we launched an update to our flagship product, Jira, we had PMs and PMMs go in directly and answer people's questions. And as you can see, people loved it. They say, I like this trend of PMs directly answering some questions, direct accountability and direct feedback. Is this you answering on your own, or is this an Atlassian official thing? And you can see here, there's a mix of different folks from Atlassian as well as a branded handle engaging one-to-one. So I want to show one example. I want to walk through of how we put together the social media aspects, the long-form aspects, different asset types, and kind of the republishing tactics. So we talk a lot about agile ways of working. And one big sticking point is around estimation and this concept of using story points for estimation. And so we had a product update go out, and it caused a little bit of a kerfuffle on social with the agile community. And so what we decided to do is host a roundtable with 6 experts to talk about estimation and story points specifically. So we created that roundtable and posted it on YouTube, and then included a link to the article. We also included that in our community with a summary and allowed people to engage in the discussion. And then we embedded that video back into the article. And then we cross-linked all of that. So you have the ability to engage with people in the discussion. You have the ability to read or watch the long-form content and understand how things have evolved. And then we posted those assets on social. And it wasn't just from our branded handle. As you can see, the Atlassian Jira handle shared that recording and shared the article. But the person who moderated that roundtable also shared it. And that gave her the opportunity to create those personal relationships and tag people on LinkedIn, which then boosted the reach of the content and boosted the engagement as those people were able to share and engage. And then, of course, those pieces were linked to each other. So this is how you create something like a playground that no matter where people enter or exit from the discussion, there's no dead end. They have a next place to go. And it's a mix of ways for them to engage. They can click a link, they can watch, they can read, they can ask a question, they can make a comment, they can share something on social. This brings us to measurement, right? We've done all the things. And a lot of marketers are super focused on CTR, right? Click-through rate, CTR, how many people clicked? What's the referral traffic? CTR, CTR, CTR. But the problem is platforms are greedy and people are lazy, right? LinkedIn wants you to stay on LinkedIn. Same with Instagram, same with Facebook, same with Twitter. And so they prioritize content and actions that keep you in the platform. And people are lazy. They don't want to have to click over to some link. They don't know what they're getting into, especially these days. If I click that, are you going to drop me onto a forum? Because now I'm angry. You've piqued my interest, but now you want my email? No, just give me what I want to know in the feed. And so as we think about that, we need to think holistically about our metrics. So something like video, you could talk about video views, subscriber growth, and yes, entrances to the views and referral traffic to another owned property. But what about things like average watch time or number of subsequent videos watched? YouTube loves to see people click next video, next video, next video. So how do you optimize for that behavior? In our case, we also look at brand paid search. So this is looking at, competitors will sometimes bid on our specific product names or brand name to compete with us. And so we look at that and we understand what is the cost of these keywords, how much traffic are we driving compared to competitors. Then there's organic traffic. Now, this is your pretty standard SEO, referral. Everyone likes to see this. How many people came to the website? And finally, unpaid social. So looking at things like follower growth, in-feed engagement, and of course, yes, there is the referral traffic piece of it, but understanding the sentiment and how people are engaging in the feed. And so I want to talk a little bit about the fact that marketing is no longer about grabbing attention. It's all about holding it. Today's best marketers understand it's not about who arrives, it's about who stays. And so I want to showcase a kind of an unconventional example to demonstrate this grabbing attention versus holding attention. And that's a campaign that the city of Vienna ran. They said, enjoy Vienna, not hashtag Vienna. They actively didn't want people to hashtag their vacation. So how the heck are you going to measure things? And what the heck are you going to do for this marketing campaign if you're not going to measure the reach and impressions of your hashtag? Well, they were clever. They created a website that talked about different types of vacations. You could come and do a wine-focused vacation or a hiking-focused vacation or a food-focused vacation. And they said, come to the tourist office and pick up an Instamax camera and take 10 photos for the whole trip. 10. Can you imagine 10 physical photos for your whole trip? And then they ran a campaign in a lot of digital hubs saying, enjoy Vienna, not hashtag Vienna. So what could they measure? They could measure things like an increase in visa applications. They could measure how many people came in and picked up the Instamax camera. They look at revenue, lift, or foot traffic to the places that were featured on that website. And all of those are much more impactful than the vanity metrics of just the reach metrics for the hashtag. It's about coming, being present, and building that relationship. Now, when I talk about this, I tend to get a lot of questions about the ideal customer journey. What is the ideal customer journey? How does this work for that? And what I say to that is that the ideal customer journey used to be as few touch points as possible to rush somebody to a purchase. But instead, today's ideal customer journey is the one that has the most seamless handoffs between all assets and all audiences and all journeys. And so as we think about building the playground, we want to focus on delighting our audience, create that quality content that engages them at each touch point. Next, focus on building the relationship. The long-term affinity for the brand is more important than driving a single transactional landing page conversion. And finally, influence at every touch point. So at this point, all content can be considered top of funnel content. And it's no longer about rushing them to a purchase. It's about educating and empowering them for success. So who is ready to build a playground for their audience? Now, of course, at some point, you do have to execute on all of this stuff. And if you're interested, I would love to tell you how Jira, Trello, and Confluence can help you do just that. So I know we have a few minutes left, and I want to open it up for Q&A.
How do you think about gated versus ungated content in this sort of playground model?
Sure. So I have come around on this. Obviously, I showed an example of gated content because I know a lot of folks are still using kind of a traditional inbound or demand gen methodology. These days, I basically only gate buying actions. Ungate all your learn intent content. Don't gate blogs, don't gate case studies, don't gate any of that. Gate creating an account, gate create a free trial or start a free trial. I tend to also prefer not to gate demo content. Now, obviously, if you need a live demo and it's a longer sales cycle, then sure, do that. But make it an explicit CTA to say contact sales for a demo. If you can demo your product in a shorter ungated video, I would recommend ungating as much content as possible. It helps from an SEO standpoint, so things aren't locked in a PDF and not able to be crawled. It helps build that trust with the audience. They can gather all the information. It shortens your sales cycle when you do that because the only people you're talking to are people who are ready to buy. And it also makes it much easier to share on social media because you're not doing this awkward, like, well, we need to gate it, but then people get upset and those kinds of things.
Perfect. Just as a reminder, if everybody look on the far left-hand side, if they're on a desktop or laptop, there's a bubble on the far left that has a question mark on it. So I'm looking at Siska, and I've talked to you like a dozen times. I've never said your last name. It's always been Ashley, and it wasn't Ashley. So apologize, I got your last name wrong. I meant to say Faus and not Faus. But another question for you. So how many conceptual level topics should we aim to have, and what is the right mix of content at each depth? Good question from the audience.
So I would say, like anything, it depends. What I've found is that people tend to go on one of two ways. They either go super broad and they're like, we're going to talk about all of marketing. Oh, okay. You need to pick something in there. Like maybe pick 3 things within marketing because you're going to struggle to be known for anything if you pick all of marketing. Or they go super niche And so they get this like one tiny little topic and they're like, I can nerd out about this. I can write 5,000 words. Okay, but now that you wrote the 5,000 words, like what does that ladder up to? Like, does it ladder up to anything? Is there more you can say? Because again, 5,000 words sounds like a lot, but that's just one piece of it. So what I found is that it tends to work out best if people choose somewhere in the 3 to 5 conceptual level topics. And then kind of, if you almost want to map it down to that, to say like, let's choose 3 conceptual topics and then 3 strategic topics per conceptual topic, and then 3 tactical topics per conceptual topic. And so if you map it out kind of that way, like if you can't get at least 5 to 7 pieces of content out of one topic or one pillar, then it's probably just a tactical piece of content, or it's probably not related to what you're doing. So for example, if we go back to that, muscle and fitness, right? Like if you're trying to holistically talk about health and fitness, there's really only so much that you can say about, the metal used to make a dumbbell and the rubber used to make a plate. Like those topics don't really relate to being healthy and fit. Mm-hmm. Those relate to material science, right? So you can maybe throw in one article if you want to talk about like, oh, powerlifters might do better to have rubber plates because they have to slam on the ground, but that's kind of tangential. Same thing from a B2B standpoint. If you think about like Atlassian has focused specifically on teams. And so, yes, we do write some content that may speak to an executive or a team leader. We may write some content that speaks to an individual, but that lens is primarily focused on how do those people and their work and their goals relate to the team versus something like individual productivity or individual mental health, like someone like Headspace might do, where they're very focused on kind of that specific mental health for the individual.
Can you stop bringing up fitness? Because I'm already starting to feel guilty enough about my COVID-15 or COVID-20 or whatever COVID number you want to attach to it. So
it's top of mind. My husband made some fancy like dessert bread last night, and I see it on the counter, and I'm like, if I just keep talking about fitness, then I won't see the bread on the counter for me to eat later.
As long as it's not tofu, I'll entertain it. So how should we treat CTAs? How do you sort of look at that in this, this sort of playground model?
There's a couple of things. I think the first is be very explicit. Go over here to learn, go over here to buy. You're not tricking anybody into buying. And I see this a lot with marketers. They're like, learn more. Haha, they're going to buy. No, they're not. You told them they were going to learn more. And now you're trying to pretend that you're going to drop them on this pricing page and haha, we've got them. No, they're going to be annoyed that you told them they could learn more and you dropped them on a pricing page, right? So I tend to be much more explicit. Like, go over here to try the product. Go over here to contact sales. Go over here to start a free trial. Go over here to get a free subscription service for the next 20 days, right? Whatever that thing is. Make those very explicit, because what you do then is you build that relationship and you allow people to go every which way. The other big thing is that I never want to have a dead end. So I mentioned this when I showcased the example of like, we cross-linked it. You could go over here and go over there. I want to include like a sidebar CTA and at least one inline CTA. And I want to have a very clear nav that makes people understand, oh, I could keep reading the blog. What's the next article? Great. I can keep watching videos. Great. Play the next video. There's another one in the playlist. Oh, I'm done with this. Where else should I go? Oh, there's a link in the description. I can go over here. Sometimes I see people, because they're so focused on that buying CTA, they narrow the CTAs to where the only next action is a buying action. And in a lot of cases, that's a huge gap. Hey, I came here to learn generally about the Agile Manifesto, and you're telling me the only thing I can do is buy Jira? Like, that's a big gap to traverse. I'm not bought in. I don't trust you. I don't have a relationship with you. I don't even know what Jira is. Like, how are these things connected? And so I would encourage people to include additional learn intent CTAs instead of just thinking, okay, I'm just going to basically a buy intent CTA is kind of a terminal CTA. And so don't make that be the only thing someone can do from a learn intent piece of content. Now, obviously, if you're, try it now, start for free, buy today, whatever. Obviously, those are acceptable on something like a pricing page. At that point, you have reached the journey of I wish to buy or I do not wish to buy, but give them an easy way to get back to the learn intent content if they're not quite ready to buy.
So another question, are we going to be able to see you in person at the Digital Archon event next year?
I hope so. We will have to see about the
We
various
better get out by
systems.
then.
And
Yeah.
man, I hear my husband's about to start the bread warming process. So this is the problem here, right? Like if I stay home, I get to eat fancy bread, but if I come in person, then I get to see fancy people.
Well,
So
I did hear the trash in the background earlier, and I had my microphone on mute. They were coming through here too, so
okay, good.
it is
Uh,
2021.
but yeah, hopefully we will be able to have this conversation in person next year.
Sounds good. Ashley, thank you again. Been a fantastic presentation. Everybody, let's give her a big virtual applause, and we'll get you out of here.
Thank you.